Wars can be terrible, but they can also spark amazing inventions. This often happens because countries desperately need new ways to defeat their enemies. These inventions can be strange and surprising, even downright bizarre. Imagine launching beehives with giant slingshots or riding a bike that shoots rockets. Today, we are going on an adventure to explore these incredible and unusual weapons you won't believe were used in war. The Goliath tracked mine. Back in 1940, while fighting in France, the German army found a strange-looking mini-tank by a river. This little contraption, built by a French designer named Adolphe Caigres, was controlled remotely, and it sparked an idea in the Germans' minds. They decided to build their own remote-controlled vehicle, but for a specific purpose: to take out enemy tanks. So they created the Goliath tracked mine. It was about the height of your knee and a little longer than a standard surfboard. Packed inside, it could carry over 130 pounds of super-strong explosives. The plan was to drive it close to enemy tanks. Then boom, take them out. Here is the thing though, the Goliath had a few problems. It was like a tiny dog on a leash. It needed a long cable, almost 700 meters long, to connect it to the person controlling it. But enemy soldiers quickly figured out they could just cut the cable, rendering the Goliath useless. Plus, it was super slow, like a turtle on wheels, and got stuck easily because it couldn't go over even small bumps. To top it all off, it wasn't very well protected, kind of like a cardboard box. Despite its limitations, the Germans built over 7,500 Goliaths, and even used them in a few battles, like the fight to take back Warsaw, Poland, and the famous D-Day invasion. While not a huge success overall, the Goliath did pave the way for even cooler remote-controlled weapons later on. And let's not forget, captured Goliaths even provided some entertainment for the American soldiers who found them: exploding rats. During World War II, Britain's Special Operations Executive, or SOE as they called it, was known for coming up with all sorts of clever and sometimes bizarre tools to fight the enemy. They created hidden weapons, devices for silent kills, and even explosives disguised as everyday objects. But with the exploding rat, they truly took things to a whole new level. The SOE gathered around 100 dead rats, carefully sliced them open, and then filled them with a special kind of explosive that didn't look like much. They then stitched the rats back up, making them look as normal as possible. Well, as normal as dead rats can be. These booby-trapped rats were then strategically placed near enemy boilers, like in factories or power plants. When a worker discovered a dead rat, they might just toss it into the boiler to get rid of it. That's where the surprise came in. The explosion from the hidden explosives would hopefully damage the boiler and cause a significant disruption. Unfortunately, the plan never even got a chance to be implemented. The Germans, ever suspicious, intercepted the container full of dead rats before they could be used. So, no explosions, no damaged boilers. But even though the plan failed, it actually ended up being a bit of a success. The Germans, now worried about the possibility of exploding rats hiding everywhere, started freaking out. They spent a lot of time and resources searching for these booby-trapped rodents, wasting valuable time and energy on a non-existent threat. In a report, the SOE even said that the trouble caused to the Germans was a much greater success than if the rats had actually been used. Even though the exploding rats never exploded, they still managed to cause some unexpected fear and confusion for the enemy. The flying boat. Imagine a machine that is faster than any ship, but bigger than any plane you have ever seen. That's exactly what the Lund-class ekranoplane was, a marvel of engineering that the Soviets built in the late 1900s. This flying boat, as some called it, was designed to be a game-changer in their military strategy. Think of it as a giant, super-powered speedboat that could skim just above the water, carrying anything from soldiers and cargo to even nuclear weapons. It could haul a whopping 2 million pounds, making it a kind of flying delivery truck for the Soviet military. The plan was to use this ekranoplane to zip across the globe, carrying small armies or supplies at incredible speeds, all while staying hidden from enemies. The ekranoplane wasn't quite a plane, nor was it a boat. It existed in a category of its own, called a ground effect vehicle. Unlike airplanes that take off and fly high in the sky, the ekranoplane used a special phenomenon called ground effect to its advantage. This phenomenon occurs when wings get close to the ground, or water in this case, and create a cushion of air that helps the craft lift more easily and experience less drag, allowing it to fly just above the water's surface. The Soviets saw this as the perfect weapon to use against their rivals, NATO. They envisioned the ekranoplane taking down enemy submarines and aircraft carriers with surprise attacks. On paper, it sounded brilliant. A fast, stealthy warship that could carry a whole army. However, things didn't quite go according to plan. While the Ekranoplane was impressive in theory, it had some limitations. Rough weather and choppy seas made it difficult and dangerous to fly. It also turned out to be not quite as undetectable as the Soviets hoped. In the end, the Ekranoplane never truly lived up to its full potential. By the time the Soviet Union collapsed in the early 1990s, the Ekranoplane project was abandoned. Wind cannon. We have all seen powerful cannons launching rockets and missiles in war movies, but have you ever heard of a cannon that fires air? During World War II, the Nazis came up with one of the strangest weapons ever conceived, the Windkanone, or wind cannon. This wasn't your typical cannon. Instead of shooting bullets or missiles, the Windkanone was a giant metal tube, 35 feet long and 3 feet wide, that pointed towards the sky. Unlike other cannons that fired bullets or missiles, the Windkanone had a different purpose. Instead of taking down enemy planes directly, it was designed to use a powerful blast of air to disrupt them. Here is how it worked. A mixture of ammonia and hydrogen gas exploded inside the cannon, creating a strong gust of wind that could supposedly push enemy aircraft out of the sky, at least in theory. The Windkanone's effective range was supposed to be around 150 meters, which sounds impressive, but in reality, it wasn't very effective. In 1945, they even mounted one on a bridge over the River Elbe, hoping to use it against Allied planes. Unfortunately, the wind blast it produced wasn't strong enough to do any real damage or disrupt the aircraft in any significant way. So, after all the effort and resources put into building it, the Windkanone ended up being a bit of a letdown. It turned out that a giant air cannon wasn't quite the wonder weapon the Nazis had hoped for, and the project was eventually abandoned. Bat bombs. In the days following the shocking attack on Pearl Harbor, a dentist from Pennsylvania named Little S. Adams had a rather unconventional idea for fighting back: bat bombs. His plan was like a scene straight out of a sci-fi movie. There would be a bomb, not filled with explosives, but with over 1,000 compartments. Inside each compartment would be a single, hibernating bat, strapped to a tiny bomb with a timer. An airplane would then fly over Japan at dawn and drop this bat bomb. As the bomb fell, it would open up, releasing the bats into the air. These bats would then disperse and find their way into the nooks and crannies of Japanese buildings, attics, roofs, walls, you name it. The bats, completely unaware of their deadly mission, would become living bomb carriers. The timers attached to the tiny bombs would then go off, setting the buildings on fire and causing widespread destruction. It was a bold and somewhat strange plan, but the National Research Defense Committee, desperate for ways to strike back, actually took it seriously. They started by capturing thousands of bats and developing tiny napalm bombs small enough for the bats to carry. They even created a complex system to release the bats from the air. However, testing the idea quickly revealed its flaws. Some bats, eager to escape their confinement, managed to break free prematurely, causing some unintended explosions, including one that blew up a hangar and even a general's car. Despite the initial enthusiasm, the project wasn't destined for success. The Marine Corps took over for a while, even conducting several demonstrations, but the program eventually ran into more problems than solutions. By the end of 1943, with the development of the atomic bomb taking priority, the Bat Bomb project was finally shelved. War dolphins. Dolphins are fascinating creatures, known for their intelligence, playful nature, and impressive communication abilities. But did you know that during the Cold War, the Soviet Union attempted to train these amazing animals for a surprising purpose: warfare? Developed in the 1960s, this project aimed to train dolphins to become underwater soldiers, searching for submerged warheads and other dangerous objects that could pose a threat. Imagine these sleek creatures, typically seen frolicking and performing tricks, being trained for such a serious task. It's interesting to note that the Soviet Union wasn't alone in this endeavor. The United States also has its own dolphin training program, focusing on using these amazing creatures for tasks like underwater reconnaissance and communication. However, unlike the Soviet program, the United States program does not train dolphins for offensive purposes or to directly harm anyone. The reason? Dolphins, despite their intelligence, can struggle to distinguish between friend and foe in the heat of combat. So, while both countries have explored the potential of using dolphins for military applications, their approaches and goals seem to have differed significantly. The Harmonica Gun. The history of firearms is filled with strange and innovative designs, some successful, some downright bizarre. Let's take a look at a weapon that combines an unlikely source of inspiration with early firearm technology, the harmonica gun. Imagine a firearm that works like a harmonica, that popular musical instrument known for its soulful blues and country melodies. Sounds strange, right? Well, in the 1840s, inventors on the American frontier actually brought this concept to life. Developed a century earlier, around the 1740s, the harmonica gun wasn't the first attempt at a multi-shot firearm, but it certainly had a unique approach. Instead of the typical revolving cylinder, this gun used a steel slide that moved back and forth like the bellows of a harmonica. This slide contained a series of chambers, each holding a separate charge of gunpowder, primer, and projectile, kind of like a magazine, but before metallic cartridges became the norm. 9 to 10 chambers were typically found in these early harmonica guns, offering a higher capacity than single-shot firearms at the time. While innovative, the harmonica gun had its limitations. Compared to the iconic six-shooters and repeating carbines that were gaining popularity, it was cumbersome and awkward to handle. Reloading was also a slow and complex process. It may not have been a huge success, but it serves as a reminder that pushing boundaries and trying new things, even if they don't always work out perfectly, is an important part of human progress. The Cruml. So far, we have seen some truly bizarre weapons, from bomb-carrying bats to guns inspired by musical instruments. But get ready for something even stranger. The Cruml, an invention from World War II that defies the very definition of a traditional firearm. Developed by the Germans, the Cruml wasn't your typical gun. Instead of a straight barrel, it had a curved one. This might sound strange, but there was a reason for it. When soldiers are on the battlefield and pinned down by enemy fire hiding behind cover, the Cruml gives them an advantage. By attaching this curved barrel to their Sturmgewehr 44 assault rifle, they could potentially shoot around corners without exposing themselves to enemy fire. It came in 2 versions, one for infantry soldiers and another for use inside armored vehicles. The infantry version had a peculiar shape, with a short straight section at the beginning, a sharp bend in the middle, and another straight section at the end. To use it, soldiers held it like a regular rifle, but aimed using a special periscope sight attached on top. Unfortunately, the Cruml had some significant drawbacks that ultimately limited its usefulness. The biggest issue was the bullet itself. Due to the sharp bend in the barrel, the bullet often broke in half as it was fired. This meant the Cruml was only effective at very short ranges, making its practical use in real combat scenarios quite limited. Another problem was the barrel itself. The curved shape put a lot of stress on the metal, causing the Cruml to wear out quickly. After just firing 150 to 300 rounds, the barrel would become unusable. For these reasons, the Cruml never saw widespread use on the battlefield. However, the concept of a corner gun remains interesting, and even today, designers are still exploring different ways to achieve this idea. Urumi. Now let's shift our focus away from the battlefields of Europe and explore a truly unique weapon from a different part of the world, the Urumi, also known as the Indian whip sword. Forget the typical image of a rigid, heavy sword. The Urumi is something entirely different. Imagine a weapon that combines the flexibility of a whip with the lethality of a sword. That's exactly what the Urumi is. This sword, originating from southern India, is one of the most bizarre and captivating weapons in history. Some even consider it to be one of the deadliest. So how does it work? Unlike a traditional sword that you hold with 2 hands, the Urumi is wielded like a whip. It is designed to be used with similar motions, flicking or lashing at the opponent. However, unlike a whip, the Urumi has a deadly secret. It's made of sharpened steel. This combination of flexibility and sharpness makes the Urumi a truly unique and potentially devastating weapon. One of the most interesting features of the Urumi is its ability to be concealed. Due to its flexible blade, it can be easily wrapped around the waist like a belt, making it discreet and easy to carry. Another interesting feature of the Urumi is the number of blades. While some Urumi have a single blade, others can have as many as 32 individual blades. These blades are attached to the hilt and gradually widen as they reach the tip. However, wielding the Urumi effectively is no easy feat. Its very flexibility, while offering an advantage in some ways, also made it difficult to control in combat. While the sharp blades posed a significant threat to the enemy, they also presented a danger to the user. Due to its flexibility, the Urumi required the wielder to constantly keep the blades in motion, often in a circular pattern, to avoid accidentally injuring themselves. Sticky bomb. In the heat of World War II, the British weren't afraid to get creative when it came to weaponry. One such outlandish invention was the sticky bomb designed to tackle the growing threat of enemy tanks. It was a grenade that, unlike its typical explosive counterparts, could be thrown and actually stick to its target. The sticky bomb had a special adhesive coating hidden under a metal casing. Soldiers would pull a pin, releasing the casing and revealing the sticky surface. They could then throw the grenade, aiming for enemy tanks or armored vehicles. The idea behind the sticky bomb was to have it stick firmly to the target, allowing the explosive to be directly attached for maximum damage. This, in theory, would be more effective than simply throwing a regular grenade, which could bounce off or roll away from the target. However, the sticky bomb wasn't without its challenges. While British Prime Minister Winston Churchill was a fan of the idea, the Explosives Board had some reservations. One major issue was that the adhesive wasn't always reliable. If the tank was dirty or muddy, the sticky bomb might not adhere properly, rendering it ineffective. Even worse, sometimes the sticky surface would cling to something it wasn't supposed to, like a soldier's uniform. This could be quite a nerve-wracking experience, considering the grenade had a 5-second fuse before detonation. Despite its limitations, over 2.5 million sticky bombs were produced during World War II and used in various campaigns. While not the ultimate success story, the sticky bomb remains an interesting example of the creative solutions devised during wartime. Now it's time for our subscribers' pick. So far, we have explored exploding rats, bomb-carrying bats, and even a gun that looks like a harmonica. History is full of bizarre and sometimes downright wacky weapons. But what about this? The image here features a soldier sporting a helmet unlike any you have seen before. It seems to have a miniature cannon protruding right from the front. Can you imagine trying to fight with this thing strapped to your head? What on earth could this contraption even be? Can you guess what its purpose was? And do you think this weird weapon ever actually played a significant role in warfare? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Buzzing soldiers. Throughout history, humans have used various tools and tactics to gain an advantage in battle. One surprisingly strange but undeniably creative method involved using insects, especially bees, as weapons. Picture a medieval battlefield, not filled with the clash of swords or the thunder of cannons, but the buzzing of countless wings and the sting of angry bees. For centuries, these very insects played an unexpected role in warfare, becoming a unique and even terrifying weapon. While rocks were the traditional ammunition for slingshots, bees had their own specialized launchers, catapults. These machines would fling entire hives at enemy positions, creating a chaotic and painful cloud of buzzing attackers. European history is full of stories of this beehive warfare, with enemies clearing enemy ships by launching these buzzing projectiles. The 14th century witnessed a significant advancement in this bizarre weaponry. Engineers developed a windmill-like device that acted as the predecessor of the Gatling gun. This ingenious machine had rapidly rotating arms that flung straw hives filled with bees, unleashing a continuous wave of stinging warriors. But it wasn't just attackers who used bees as weapons. European nobles, recognizing the potential of these buzzing soldiers, ensured their honey producers were also prepared for havoc, as the situation demanded. The walls of many medieval castles had special built-in compartments called bee bowls. These were essentially cozy homes for the nobles' own private bee armies, ready to be unleashed if needed. So the next time you hear the buzzing of a bee, remember that these tiny creatures have a surprisingly long and fascinating history as unexpected participants in human conflicts. From medieval catapults to hidden chambers in castles, bees have left their mark, not only on honey production, but also on the strange and surprising world of warfare. Man-catcher. This next weapon definitely takes the cake for weirdness. It might look like something straight out of a medieval torture chamber, but the man-catcher was actually a surprisingly effective tool used for centuries in Europe, and even in some parts of the world today, though in a slightly tamer form. The weapon is a circular metal contraption mounted on a long wooden pole, with two semi-circular pieces forming its head. Its key feature is a spring-loaded door at the front, sometimes equipped with sharp spikes in older versions. Now, before you start picturing gruesome scenes, remember, the main goal of the man-catcher wasn't to inflict serious injury, but to capture individuals, specifically those on horseback. The circle in the middle was just slightly larger than the average waist size, allowing the user to trap the rider by snapping the man-catcher around their neck. The spring-loaded door would open slightly upon contact, allowing the person to be caught and then snap shut. effectively immobilizing them. The long pole provided a safe distance for the user, preventing the captured individual from using a weapon like a sword. While it might seem like an unusual choice, man-catchers weren't just used in battles. They also served as a tool for prison guards to control aggressive inmates. Despite the potentially intimidating look, especially with the earlier spiked versions, it's important to remember that the primary purpose wasn't to inflict harm, but to restrain and subdue individuals in a relatively safe way. Feathered pilots. The Second World War wasn't just about tanks, planes, and soldiers. It saw the development of some truly innovative, and sometimes downright strange, weapons and tactics. One such project, though ultimately unsuccessful, stands out for its sheer unorthodoxy, using pigeons to guide missiles. Imagine this: a bomb hurtling towards its target, not guided by complex electronics or sophisticated radar, but by the pecking of trained pigeons. This was the ambitious idea behind Project Pigeon, led by the renowned psychologist B.F. Skinner. Back then, accurately targeting missiles was a major concern. Skinner, known for his research on animal behavior, believed he could train pigeons to act as pilots for guided missiles. The concept was based on his previous work with pigeons, where he taught them to perform specific actions like pulling levers. He reasoned that they could be trained to recognize targets and guide a missile towards them. Despite the skepticism of the National Research Defense Committee, they decided to give Skinner the green light and a budget of $25,000 to develop his project. Skinner designed a special nose cone for the missile that housed 3 compartments, each designated for a single kamikaze pigeon. Inside each compartment, the pigeon faced a tiny screen displaying an image of the ground below. The birds were then trained to peck at the screen whenever they saw their designated target. The idea was that when all 3 pigeons pecked the screen simultaneously, a complex system of cables connected to their heads would adjust the missile's flight path, steering it towards the target. While the idea sounds fantastical, it actually showed promise. In 1944, Project Pigeon successfully completed a test demonstration. However, despite this success, the project ultimately faced its demise. The research committee remained unconvinced and skeptical, ultimately deciding to terminate the project before any pigeons saw actual combat. Lipstick gun. This may look like your average tube of lipstick, but take a closer look. It's actually a lipstick pistol, a weapon used by KGB operatives during the Cold War. Can you imagine the element of surprise? Disguised as an everyday makeup item, this small but deadly weapon could be easily concealed, making it perfect for covert operations. This single-shot pistol was chambered for a tiny 4.5mm round, powerful enough to be lethal at close range. Unlike most firearms, it couldn't be fired from a distance. Instead, the user would press the barrel directly against the target to discharge the weapon, delivering a silent and potentially fatal kiss of death. Stick pistol, while small and discreet, wasn't without its limitations. Its single-shot nature meant a second chance was unlikely, and its effectiveness heavily relied on getting close enough to the target, making it a risky weapon to use. Despite these limitations, the lipstick pistol remains a fascinating relic of the Cold War, showcasing the lengths to which intelligence agencies went to develop covert weaponry during this period of intense espionage and geopolitical tension. Weaponized Vespa. Forget massive tanks and roaring jets. Sometimes the most surprising weapons come in the smallest packages. Enter the Vespa 150 TAP, a motor scooter used by French paratroopers in the 1950s. While it might sound strange, this unconventional choice proved surprisingly successful. During the post-World War II era, the French military needed a light, portable vehicle that could be parachuted behind enemy lines. So what did they come up with? A modified Vespa scooter. Yes, you heard that right. The French chose the Vespa 150, a popular civilian scooter known for its affordability and maneuverability. They partnered with a French vehicle company to modify the Vespa for military use, producing around 600 of these fighting scooters between 1956 and 1959. These weren't your typical Vespas, though. The military versions were equipped with a reinforced frame to handle the weight of soldiers and gear. They also had lower gear ratios for better performance in rough terrain. Gone were the bright, cheerful colors. These scooters sported a more military-looking olive drab or sand-colored paint job. But the most surprising addition was the M2075mm recoilless rifle mounted on it. This American-made weapon gave these little scooters some serious firepower. While it was typically removed for aiming and firing, it could even be fired while the scooter was still moving. Now, you might be thinking, how effective could a scooter with a rifle strapped to it be? Surprisingly, the The Vespa proved quite successful. It was lightweight and easy to maneuver, allowing paratroopers to quickly move around the battlefield and engage enemies. The small size also made it easier to hide, providing an element of surprise. While the top speed of around 40 miles per hour wasn't exactly impressive, it was sufficient for short-range missions behind enemy lines. Thank you for watching this video.
See you in the next one.